So the Kimmel firing related to a remark about Charlie Kirk goes deeper than you think. And I am going to share with you in this 10-minute video how we are going to take down Brendan Carr, the chair of the FCC, the very MAGA chair of the FCC, who seems to think that he can use his power of approving broadcast waivers to squeeze the life out of voices from the left, and we won't let him do it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more background about this using my experience as a 10-year federal communication regulatory lawyer that I'm going to bring to you, and I'm going to give it to you clear and give it to you like it is, because that's what I do. I'm JJ Legal. I am in the dockets, the lawsuits filed against the Trump administration and those that the Trump administration files against others. I help you go beyond the headlines, simplify it, break it down, and give you a sense of calm and knowing that the courts are working, though it doesn't seem like it. But this one is a little bit different, and I'm glad I'm able to meld my FCC communications lawyer background with my journalism background, with my whatever else I'm doing on social media these days, all together. All right, stay tuned. First, let me play for you what Jim Kimmel actually said about Charlie Kirk and Donald Trump and how this all relates. First, listen to this.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half-staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House.
Yes, okay. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. There's demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
It's pretty knuckles, like pretty tame, right? I've heard him say more like cringy sort of things against Donald Trump and the right. Shortly thereafter, the station that owned ABC decided to suspend him indefinitely. And my first spidey sense, when someone asked me about this, I said, well, he's a celebrity and there's a morality clause that comes with these contracts to say if you say something to embarrass the company or you say something that can interfere with a business deal or something like that, we have the right to suspend you or get rid of you. So that's what I was thinking, harmless or foul. And then afterwards, folks start mentioning a merger. And I was like, it makes sense now. Let me go do some research. Doing some research, it turns out that the reason, and actually Brendan Carr, the chair of the FCC, went on, I think it was Sean Hannity, bringing up the firing of Jimmy Kimmel. And essentially, he kind of almost praised or lauds, or it seems to be he's, fascinated or interested in the fact that it came about because there is a company that has a merger request in front of Brendan Carr. And that company wants to do something that is unprecedented, that would have never been done in the history of FCC. Essentially is raise the local station ownership cap to 80% from 39%. And let me tell you what that means. In the United States, our federal communication laws restrict the ability for any one company or corporation to own too many local stations in one market. Why? Because they value viewpoint diversity. Not diversity of people, viewpoint diversity. So there's a cap on what you can earn. Now, if you want to go above that cap, you'd have to go to the FCC and get a waiver request. The FCC grants them once in a while, but usually modestly. Nexstar is looking to acquire Tegna for $6.2 billion, the results of which Net will own 80% of the local market across the entire USA. Tell me that's not a problem. Why do we know this is a problem? It's because Nexstar, because they figured that Brendan Carr is a MAGA, Brendan Carr has to approve its waiver, decides, because of Jimmy Kimmel's comment, that it's not going to carry Jimmy Kimmel locally on its market. Now imagine now, and that's when it has, I don't know how much percentage of it has. Let me tell you how many right now it has. If the deal were to go through, Nexstar Tegna merger, it would own 265 stations in 44 states and the District of Columbia, with a footprint of 132 of the country's 210 designated markets, the standard unit Nielsen uses to measure TV audiences. That includes 9 of the 10 top markets, 41 of the top 50, 62 of the top 75, and 82% of the 100. So they can threaten to not carry Disney, yank Jimmy Kimmel. What do you think that means for any content? That means that they would have control and can squeeze the life out of the left and punish anyone who airs something that's against it and has a direct impact. This is why the FCC should not be allowed to raise the cap and approve this merger. But Brendan Carr would want to approve the merger, and they need Brendan Carr to approve the merger. Brendan Carr is for Charlie Kirk, wouldn't like anyone criticizing him, and they want the merger approved. So they do this, yank someone from Disney, ABC, that says something against Charlie Kirk, or is not even modest, and just proving the point. They prove the point. Now, who's on the other side of this who would not want the merger raised? The organization represent free press journalists. They say every time there's a media consolidation, newsrooms leak and consolidate, and journalists lose their jobs. Similarly, the cable, satellite, and streaming networks, in order to carry broadcast stations or networks have access to them through retransmission rights, they have to negotiate. So when there is consolidated, when one party owns 80%, that removes competition, removes price competition. So they can charge whatever they want because no one else has any other options because one party owns 80%. Now, I know from my experience doing communications law that whenever there's a Democrat president, that is when all these broadcast agencies partner up with nonprofit organizations and they make all these concessions. Then they coast because they know the minute there is a Republican office, that's when they run to go get their mergers done. We already know Paramount has already merged with Sinclair Broadcasting, which raised the spidey senses of a bunch of Democrats in Congress. But by the time they could say anything, so much chaos right now, these past 10 months, the merger went through. There's another merger that's going to require a waiver between, what was it? Hold on, let me look. Gray Media is going to buy 10 stations in 10 markets from the Allen Group, and that's going to create duopolies, and that's going to require a major waiver. And we already seen Connoisseur Alpha, where Connoisseurs merged with Alpha, getting a waiver. This was in August, last month, and they got stations in Texas that required a waiver that would go over the local ownership markets, like limitations. That's what they do, and everyone's trying to get their waiver, their mergers in now, because who knows what's going to happen in the future. And so there's a race to do this. And if all the broadcast stations, their arguments for why the caps should be lifted or just removed altogether is because they say there's a lot of competition from Netflix, Amazon Video, Apple. And none of those folks are regulated. In the United States, if you don't know, we don't regulate the internet. That's another video for another day for why we don't regulate the internet. And because of that, the competitors to the broadcast networks are saying that, we can't compete with them because they're not regulated. We have all these restrictions. So lift it. Again, like I told you, the opposition is the cable, satellite, and the other folks, and the other opposition is the journalists, but the other opponents could be us, the people. And this is an example of why we need to get activated for all the nonprofit groups that are sitting at the side waiting to say, what's the next big thing to activate the left? This is it, because they need approval for the merger, and any approval for merger for a waiver has to go through public notice and comment. The Connoisseur Alpha deal went through with unopposed, no opposition. And under the Administrative Procedure Act, an executive agency opens up for public comment. They cannot act without gathering all the data and research and information and input from the public. If they act without doing all that stuff, it's going to be called arbitrary and capricious. And then someone can challenge the decision. Someone can challenge the waiver if the FCC acts without taking in consideration everything, including a bunch of comments from the public saying, we do not want this, because if we do this and you allow one entity, then that means essentially that is silencing the vote from the left, the voice from the left forever. That is what it is. This is so Project 2025. And it goes deeper because you know what? We were just saying they're taking over he owns the courts, and the Supreme Court is letting Donald Trump destroy America one procedural win at the time, one stay at a time. Then you have the Congress just greenlighting all of his crazy, unqualified sycophants, his appointments, all of them. They're just greenlighting them. They greenlit the big beautiful bill. So there's nothing. And then they're stealing congressional funds by yanking back and clawing back and impounding all of the funds that are already been allocated from Congress. So you have the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary just rogue, just out of control. And we just heard news about the Department of Education partnering with all these conservative groups to sort of change civics. They're essentially trying to rewire propaganda and turn the United States into North Korea or Russia or China all in one. Just quiet dissent. And this is why we need to speak out. And this is why none of this can be done without the proper procedure. I know that when Brendan Carr says that we have the right to enforce the public interest, he knows that you don't know that once a broadcast station or broadcast network, wherever, gets their license, that license is good for 8 years. They usually very rarely yank it back. The only time they get an opportunity to take away a license is usually during the renewal period. It's almost impossible. The standards to revoke it midstream. So when people say that, oh, they're going to revoke the license of ABC because of viewpoint speech, that can be done immediately. This administration is crazy. They do all sorts of stuff that's rogue, but no. So what happens during the renewal period? They open for notice and comment. Then they make the decision on whether to renew it based on comment. Now, what are the odds that people are going to say that one comment, like a 20-second comment during one stand-up bit, during one night, in 1 month of 1 year, during an 8-year term, is enough to deny someone license renewal? That's not going to happen. I have been a FCC regulatory attorney. I've worked for nonprofits and represented the interests of nonprofits, and we've tried to get rarely licenses not renewal, and we bring up all sorts of stuff. They never, ever revoke and not renew. It's very hard. The standard to not renew is very high. So it's very unlikely that they would have renewed, they would have blocked or yanked ABC's license over this one comment. So that's not possible. Now, the other thing where they can actually do something with content is when the content has to do with decency. You know, you've heard George Carlin's 7 dirty words. The 7 dirty words you can't say on broadcast, or the FCC is going to come after you.
You know the 7, don't you, that you can't say on television? Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits, huh?
So yes, whether it's dealing with content related to decency and children be able to hear things. Now, nothing Jimmy Kimmel said would have violated that, but if he did, what would be the repercussions? They wouldn't yank their license. They would give them a fine. The fine would be something maybe large, but still nominal considering how wealthy these corporations are. So that's it. It would be a fine. It's not something that you yank them for, that you remove the person who said it indefinitely. That's not the solution. And so he knows this, that he can't do that. So that's why you should know it has nothing to do with him directly. It's indirectly. It is the Nexstar doing that to appease Brendan Carr, who can approve the merger, which would essentially require changing the rules and raising the cap from 39% to 80%. Raising the cap from 39% to 89% cannot be done unilaterally by Brendan Carr alone. It has to go through the notice and comment period. A waiver could be granted, but trying to waive when the person who's asking to waive is going to do something like what Nexstar is doing, have the ability to control viewpoint because they own all the broadcast section. Now that's dangerous. The only saving grace in this is that there are a lot of people that do not get their news, their TV, their entertainment, their television from just straight broadcast. A lot of people are on streaming services. A lot of people are on, cable. They're getting their TV content some elsewhere. However, nonetheless, those of us who have the internet, those of us who are online, and I remember this from my years when I used to do nonprofit organization, we take it for granted that there are a lot of people that listen to radio, they listen to broadcast TV. They do not have cable. A lot of folks in the rural areas, whatever, they don't have that stuff. And there are just some communities that just don't have access to it. And that's why it's really important that we maintain the diversity of ownership. The United States says you can't own too much local stations this way. You can't horizontal ownership integration. You can't own too many vertical integration up and down. So the network, the distribution mechanism, the content, the local, one person owns all that. They can control the viewpoint. For example, Fox local news, every once in a while, they are forced to carry a conservative viewpoint, even though the Fox local in the DC area is very, very liberal, but they will be forced to carry someone. That's coming from the top. That's the impact of vertical integrations coming up and down. And I have also seen something happen, and when there's a network group, and the network group gives all these local broadcasters the same script, and they're all reading the same script, and it's all going out. And that's the dangers of just the ownership, is because the owners can actually control. That's why viewpoint diversity is important. That's why duopoly, like the one that would have to be approved, where you're owning some of this way, you're owning some of the distribution, you're owning some of the content, you're owning some of the local, all of those things, there are restrictions on that as well, because it serves, and this is exactly why we need to get together and block this and say we can't do it. And if they try to do it, even after the course of our voices say block it and they do it, then we would sue, because it'd be violation of arbitrary and capricious, because there's all these voices and everyone's saying why you can't do it. The body of law, the impact of it, that it would not be in the public interest. I heard Brendan Carr say, the FCC have not been enforcing the public interest. Why are you assuming the public interest is just the left, right-wing MAGA point of view? Because MAGAs represent 22%. So if we're really going to say, well, the majority wins, then that wouldn't be MAGA, because they're 22% of the population, 32% of the electorate. Everyone else is just don't know how to use their power, or feel disempowered, or just so comfortable. I say this about the Americans compared to where I'm from, Sierra Leone. There's a higher voter turnout rate because people don't have much. We don't have a safety net. So we don't have the government standards. So there's smog there. There's no standards in a lot of things. No safety net. It's tough when you have someone who's going to say, "I'm going to get rid of smog. I'm going to give you some security." You're going to vote for that person. You're going to go to vote. But when you have people who are comfortable, whether you're comfortable because you're wealthy or comfortable because you have a government safety nets in forms of like benefits and support and subsidies, that voting is optional for you. You don't necessarily have to vote. That's why the voter turnout is not necessarily high in the United States, because we're comfortable. So this era, this first 10 months of Trump just destroying everything, decimating lives, crazy inflation has gone through the roof. All the prices are up. Shelves are empty. People can't afford the child care. People can't afford their homes. Folks are losing jobs. People can't find jobs. They can't afford their rent, their food, everything. His trade policy is messing with the farmers. The Chinese aren't buying the soybean. MAGAs are calling the ice on plants, where South Koreans are training and are about to give 8,000 jobs to Georgia and decide, no, never mind. And we're just not only pulling that plant, we're going to pull all the plants and all the other businesses international. So yeah, we don't want to do business with the United States because it's a hostile environment, and international students don't want to come to our schools. And so our colleges and universities lose money that we normally get for international students because freaking Marco Rubio is going around denying their visas, arresting them, looking at their social media. Who the hell wants that? That's all right. I'll go to UK or someplace else. Then you have visitors not wanting to come here to visit. You have the National Guard implanting itself in cities, messing with the tourism industry, messing with the restaurant industry, the entertainment, and all the cities where National Guard, because who wants to dine next to soldiers? Like, all your unforced errors essentially driving the economic prosperity away from the United States. And it's sad that they don't realize that. He doesn't recognize that. So when you have this kind of destructive environment, that's when we have to stand up and say, you know what, we're not going to take this. And wherever we can, whatever we can use our voice and power, we will. So I'm going to put a link down, and if you watch this on YouTube, or wherever you're watching this, come to my YouTube channel at JJ Legal and find this video below. Behind this video, I'm going to put a link to some of the nonprofit organizations that's watching this, that normally gathers people, that get people to do comments, to say, hey, come on, let's do a comment. So we flood the FCC with comments to oppose this merger. Hopefully we can tell them and stop them from growing, so they can't do this, or let Disney, let the powers be know that the people, they're more of us than them. The owners, they're more of us. And so people are saying boycott Disney, boycott. This is something that you can do that's really, really effective. I really highly recommend that you do this. Anyway, so I'm going to put the links to the groups that I've worked with before. They may be on this, and so you can get on it. So that'll be your part. It's not just about Kimmel. It's just about quieting the voice from the left, and this is the first step in it. This is part of it. So, all right. Hope that's helpful for you. JJ Legal, each one teach one. I'm in the dockets. Share this video widely. Let other people read it. Let other people know. Let other people be access to the links below. And yeah, we got this. I think we can. We just have to be smart about it. We just have to go for it. We can do it. I have faith in you. I think you can do it.